Super, thank you so much. Thank you, Andy.
I'll talk to you in a couple of weeks or a week or so.
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely, thank you.
Move on.
The spotlight is sitting right there, so. Oh, we were trying to get a light on the speaker though. Okay, is it still have that? Yes, good, yes, great. Yeah, just turn down that. Sure, sure. Right. If this is a great setup, it's good, good. And
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
For you guys.
Thank you.
no, we don't think. Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Go around. I'm there. How are you doing? Good. How are you? I'm pretty sure you're yourselves to cookies and water and soda and whatever you want. Over, I'm going to projectile vomit. I'm not actually going to.
No, but I'll take it. I'm a kleptomaniac, it's fine.
Here's, this would be bad if my tablet was about to die.
Here's Nancy's copy.
Thank you, sweetheart. It's at 39, we'll live. Well, good thing is he's not on it. Stick. You sit there. Sitting there, you sit there. Sit there. Where's Kayla gonna sit? There's 2 books on this.
Yes.
We just, yeah, I'm gonna take it. We're all good? Okay, so he's not back. Now I felt pretty well. Okay, you guys wanna be in my second view room? Yeah, I'll like it. I didn't take public speaking for this reason. I'm saying people speaking, then you got this.
You think I would have got there?
I took it with Nancy. Now I think we'll use it.
Happiness.
Wait, do you guys have the thing that we signed?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, want to make sure.
You're reading? I'm reading. Absolutely. Cool. Thank you. We get to follow Mike.
I know.
Wait, all of our pieces.
I
are so bad.
I didn't print out any of mine. I'm reading it off my tablet.
Okay. I just really, I checked back like 2 weeks, I didn't see anything. Then I take over. Like,
I really only into.
So here. What am I? Again, I picked through, so I look like I'm like. Oh my god. Your folks come.
No.
My mom used to work and she was so mad because I didn't know that anyone could come. I thought it was just. Oh, it was like the. She's going to Facebook and she's like, you didn't tell me. I was like, watch. I'm like, but she.
My boyfriend's in media and has finals.
Well, we're recording it. Yeah, so, I will send you the link when it is.
Like. You know, can we put a cap on how many people can show up? Cause I'm like, this is good.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I meant the fair.
Yeah, do actually.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. You two are good. Yes. Yes.
They'll say.
Are you going to read? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but we're gonna sit up here. I see that.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Leave one for Jessica and then. Leave this one open for Jess in the middle.
I like that people say cool, but now that makes me actually.
Thanks.
I think I'm in a.
Oh, no, it was.
I don't remember the most.
Is that her?
Too much sad, so I just forget it.
Her was good with her.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Itself.
You know, I went down rabbit hole.
Sorry. Oh, there she is.
Oh, yeah.
Jessica? Not even seeing us. You probably have to get her attention. Oh, is there a sign in over there?
Mom. Sit here.
I'm glad. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I was unaware that. I'm going to read one. Okay. When you go out. So I'm expecting to, I'm gonna get up there. Hey guys, good to know you all. I think we're all. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. My pieces are not great. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Five, I have to like. I should have. Like submitted the one poem that I'm reading to the, oh, because I know that was, love this one. This is the one that I read in Nancy's class, and that's so easy to like that. And they critiqued it for that. Oh, yes.
I literally made edits. I was like, we need actors on better like that. This is that good. How fun is- We'll start in a few minutes, folks. So
I think you can keep it going. Still have all suggestions.
I don't know, this is I thought it was gonna be that.
And then my mom just loves me. Oh, I just.
Well, the online will be a different experience, but it's. They just wanted to experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to go restart. I know. It's even worse.
You wear so much on my top. That's pretty cool. Oh, that's sleigh.
Well, if it drippings, I don't want to be stepping in wetness at the back. I had the same thought. I was Congress and Crocs. I'm like, well, it's boring outside. Exactly. Yeah.
Our beach.
Right. This is the things that make it together. Because I all of that is my nature. I just like this.
Same thing, and you thought we're. We just can't be. She is me. Wait, what? She.
Hey, her.
Yeah.
Mary Kate. This is a pretty good. What's wrong? No, we're good.
Oh.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Walk out other people.
It's not quite time yet, but. Do you want to go ahead and start? Because I think everybody that's gonna be here is here. Do you want to?
Yeah, we can do that. Pretty much in that order.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the last, can you hear me? I think it's on.
It's not. I don't think it's on.
It's not.
I can hear you, but it's not.
Should we edit this part out?
My team will edit it out of the tape anyway. Well, welcome everybody. This is the last writers project of 2022, 2023. And we are so delighted to have our 5 graduating creative writing majors reading from their own work today. It's also a special day because the student literary magazine Expressions just arrived on Friday when the English division was out at a conference. So we have stealthily around campus and left piles of it here and there. So these are free for the taking. So please take 1 or 2 on your way out and enjoy that. There's also a website which will launch on Wednesday, right? This Wednesday. So if you Google Expressions SUNY Adirondack on Wednesday, it will come up. All right. So we have 5 wonderful students today. Michael Dinga is going to start us off.
Yeah, Mike.
Alphabetically, it would be Melissa, but there is a rumor that some of the students are a little nervous. If you want to give them a really warm welcome in a minute, that would be very much appreciated. All right. Lacey Howe will be second. Then we'll have Elle or Elizabeth Mahoney, and then Melissa Eggleston, and finally Kayla Madison. All right. Please give them a warm welcome.
Hello, everyone. It's a blessing to be here. My name is Michael Dinga. I am graduating. This is not a five. There's a degree and everything. I haven't seen it, but they tell me it's there. SUNY Adirondack has given me has been as great of a space for education as it has been for creativity. The Visual Arts Gallery alone has been a place where I've spent a lot of time with the works of students, immigrants, children, and artists of all backgrounds. And they have all used their talents to voice their truth and teach us a thing or two about what art really looks like. As a writer, I've especially enjoyed the guest speakers from these past 2 semesters. There is no better way to grow than to learn from those who have already grown. And I've learned a lot from the stories shared in this very room. The story I have to share with all of you was written specifically for Expressions magazine. The background of this story, Venice and Chile, has a lot to do with my background. I am a Christian and an avid churchgoer, and having lived in a few different places, I've gone to a few different churches, some good, some great, and some not so great. The common theme I've noticed with the not so greats has been the sin of pride, and so I wanted to write a story about pride in church, and this is what I came up with. Venice and Chile. The city where the church stood did not exist like the mountains that followed. While the trees began to shed their October dress, the lights that withered between the streets of Tilson died and stayed dead. Even the fawn in their first year would take part in the unwritten understanding that everything beautiful would be buried and born again in the same months as it always did. Though such comfort in routine would see its defeat in most of the city, a portrait of tradition could be found in the faces at a church dinner. 2 women, Beth and Talisha, sat alone at a table fit for 6 others. Beth's plate was being freshly filled for a 3rd time as she enjoyed listening to the clash of silverware with the chattering of familiar voices. She nodded in approval, allowing her tall stature to take in the room. When she sat down, she noticed Talisha still toying with her first plate of pasta. "Did you try the venison chili?" Beth asked. "I did, it's good," Talisha spoke softly. "It's from Ryan and Sarah." Knowing Ryan, he probably went up to the mountains and found it himself. "Tasted as fresh." "Yeah, it was good." "Did you hear about their niece, little Jessie?" I did, Talisha said, putting down her fork. "Can you believe that? Little Jessie. Remember how happy she was coming here? Why did she stop?" "That was a long time ago." "I wish she had stayed," Beth continued. "The church would have helped her. God would have helped her." "Maybe. Who really knows?" The chatter around the room grew quiet. Many began to return their plates and gather their coats. The sound of chairs scraping against the gray polyester carpet filled the room. She used to run around during Sunday school with those little pirate toys, Beth went on. Always a smile, always a bright look on her face. You just knew she had Jesus in her heart. The two sat in silence for a while and watched the room empty out almost completely. Talisha got up to hand in her plate as Beth waved hers for Talisha to take as well. When she got back, she looked around the room and noticed only a few stranglers left. The first thing she did when she got here in the morning would be to wrap her little arms around Kathy. Then she would run to her again before she left, Beth said, looking over at the older lady sitting alone at the table across the room. That part never changed. Even at 14 or 15, you can never separate those two. Yeah, I remember, Talisha said, glancing in the same direction. You lose that purpose in life when you stop believing, Beth went on, and you give up that sense of community when you stop coming to church. I wouldn't know what to do without it. I mean, look what she did. Talisha's eyes perked up from her plate. We don't know what she did, why she did what she did. She was depressed, Beth snapped with an offended tone. Who wouldn't be in this world without God? It takes a lot to have faith nowadays, Talisha said. She had faith, then she stopped coming. That's the problem. How do you know what her problem was? I'm just saying what I see. So she would hug Kathy, go home, and then what? Talisha responded. You talk about her as if she lived here. You don't know what she did for fun, how she did in school, don't know why her parents stopped coming. For an hour a week, you watched her hug Kathy and play with toys, and now you know what her problem was. Beth didn't flinch. She stood up straight, threw her shoulders back, and said softly, her problem was my problem as a child. I would have preached the gospel to her as my mother did to me, as I would to anyone thinking of ending their life. You should do the same. You should have wanted for Jess what you have for yourself. She leaned forward, putting her elbows on the table and grasping her hands. You have this church and carry his spirit. She only had it as a child before she chose to leave us behind. You sat at the same table she did. The difference is you stayed. Talisha sat up. Not here, not at this table, she protested. I'm going to check on Kathy, or do you know the answer to grief as well? Talisha made her way over to the other side of the room and sat next to Kathy near the window. How are you, Kathy? I'm fine, dear. How are things with you? What on earth were you and Beth being so back and forth about? We were just talking about Jess. Little Jessie, how is she? No one told you? No, what happened? Kathy, why don't we get out of here? Leave this church for a while. Talisha asked softly, reaching out to hold her hand. They drove off, getting lost somewhere between the laws they left behind and the unwritten ones that followed. The mountains stood just as tall in the summer that preceded. They welcomed a frequent visitor to once again tread on the critters below. Jessica returned to her favorite spot where the view was another world and the cliffside wore its moss like a soft glove. You need to call out of work and join me right now, Jess said, turning her phone around for Talisha to see her view. Stop, I'm already mad for missing this weather, Talisha responded. My mother loved this place. I still remember the first time she took us. I never wanted to leave. Everyone from church tells me she's in a better place. How is that possible? Is that why you haven't been going? Because I feel that, Talisha responded. Jessica crossed her legs, dangling them over the cliff. She placed the phone on her lap, placed her hands comfortably on the moss behind her, and leaned back on the support of her arms. People have fallen off, you know, Talisha added, realizing where the camera had moved, living on the edge. People have done it, but no one can say what it's like, Jess said. People even miss me at church. Of course, Jess, are you kidding? Everyone in church loves you. I know, you guys say that a lot too. I don't know if I have time for another story that I wrote. Okay. So this next story is called Phantom Chalk. It was a story that I had written for Professor Davidson's class, and I chose it as a radical revision, and I revised it and tried to improve on the dialogue as I search for it here. I'm sorry. And this one is a little bit more supernatural. Might not. I apologize. I have it here. I just have to find where it starts. Might have pulled. Thank you. Phantom chalk. It was my time, my costly hour of mending the mind. I've gone 4 months without it and yet felt more ill coming back than all the crazies that practically live here. I thought I was brave to live without the care of Dr. Adams, but I had only been lying to myself about my relationship with my boyfriend, Zach. There was no courage in denying it any longer. It's good to see you, Kathia, Dr. Adams said warmly. It was nice to hear his voice again. I was sitting in the waiting room right outside his office. There was a travel magazine placed in front of me. The airline on the cover made me pause. Please come in, make yourself at home, he said, looking down at me. We sat across from each other in identical chairs like always. We spent time filling the gap between our last meeting and now, but the conversation quickly became about Zach. Zachary Larson found himself alone in the hallways of Montclair State University. He carried Helena, a rag doll in his pocket. When he arrived at class, the room was empty. He waited outside the door, removed Helena from his pocket, and rubbed her stomach with his thumb for good luck. They then paced back and forth in the hallway for almost 10 minutes. No one showed up. Zach moved his thumb up to Helena's face. I'm sorry. He looked inside the window of the classroom. There were no lights on, but he could tell something was written on the blackboard. Black and white, he said to her. Put Helena back in his pocket after realizing the door was unlocked. He turned the lights on and saw a list of numbers and letters written on the board. The answers, he thought. Helena, you never cease to amaze. Before he could finish studying them, he heard footsteps coming from down the hall. He wiped the chalk away in a panic with his hands. When the proctor arrived, he was sitting patiently at his desk. I hope you've all done your homework, he said, walking through the door before realizing there was only one student in the room. Where is everybody? Just us, just me, Zach said, hiding his powdered hands in his pockets. Well, it's 2 o'clock, even if they're dead. Black and white, Helena whispered. Just the white for now, Zach whispered back. He used Helena to wipe off the dust. She was now covered in Zach's stolen answers and ready to read them back to him. The proctor opened up the top drawer of a metal desk and pulled out a fresh stick of white chalk. He began writing on the board. Zach, still waiting to receive his test, watched him curiously. Black days ahead, he wrote. The letters became haze the more Zach stared at them. The proctor wrote again. She'll end it soon. Zach's mind grew cloudy. I'm sorry, what kind of test is this? Cheer up, Mr. Larson. You're in the right place, the man reassured. The test suddenly arrived on Zach's desk and his hands jolted out of his pockets. Helena had gotten caught on his sleeve and the rush of his arms threw her onto the floor. What's this? The man said, looking down within a disgusted tone. Her name's Helena. She looks sad. She's a mess right now and she doesn't smile. Picked her up and dusted her off. His hands held her tight as rubbed across the rigid linen skin. Why make a doll that does not smile? He asked. Why live as a doll and not smile? Zach retorted. Because she is unhappy with the man that carries her. He placed the doll inside his pocket. I'll carry her now. You focus on what's in front of you. Back in Dr. Adams' office, I was grinding my teeth at the thought of Zach. He knows I'm afraid to fly. Out of all the schools in California, why waste time in New Jersey? I was asking myself as I was asking the world. Were the two of you having problems? Dr. Adams asked, still sitting across from me. We had something at some point before he left. A fight? Not really. My eyebrows tightened. I folded my hands and looked down to the side of the room. Well, I don't know exactly what it was, but it happened when he first brought up the idea of going back to school. I just didn't understand. He's 36 years old. We're making good money. Why go back now? You asked him this? Yes. And he took it like I was telling him not to go. I'm okay with him going to school. For me, it's like, fine, do whatever you want to do, but at least tell me why. Why now? Why do you think, what do you think the reason was? His calm and direct tone caused me to pause and take a deep breath. I don't know. Maybe he just needed to explore the world outside of Fresno, he suggested. No, you don't know him. He doesn't think about stuff like that, I said plainly. You're right, I don't know him. He got up from his chair. But there's an experiment I want you to try that might help. He walked over to a pair of cabinets that were underneath his bookshelf, just left of where I was seated. Behind a few books, he kept a mini blackboard and a box of colored chalk. I want you to write the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Zachary, he said, handing me the board and chalk. Without hesitation, I wrote in large strokes to fill the board's face. My eyes widened when I sat and looked at what I wrote. I thought about what it really meant and why it reminded me of him. Show me, he said curiously. I turned around and showed him. Smile, I wrote. Why does that remind you of him? Because he always loved my smile, but never cared if I was happy. That's that.
Right, hi everyone. I'm Lacey. I am a soon-to-be graduate. Kind of just looking back on it now. I mean, I'm obviously not going to stand to be anything next after Mike, but I started my whole college situation kind of rocky. I was originally going to a different school, but with all the woes of financial aid and all of that, I ended up making the decision to come here, and I'm really happy about it. I personally, after graduating, I really don't know what I'm going to do. I know that I am taking a year off at least, kind of figuring out what I want to do, kind of will pay them sticking with. I'm going to be working as a tutor in the CRW, kind of keeping in the college realm. But looking back, all of my pieces, it was kind of a fun little flashback. I haven't had the time to write my own work recently, but I've kind of looked back and picked out some that showed my progression throughout my years here. This first piece, it's a little morbid in a sense, which is kind of where I kind of find my comfort zone. It's kind of messed up. But this first piece was also graciously chosen as editor's choice for this year's literary magazine. It's called Living Masterpieces. So, yeah. His dry hands maneuvered themselves around the block of wet clay, turning the oblong shape into something more meticulous and beautiful. After minutes of pulling apart and piecing together chunks of the clay, it was all coming together. He takes a deep breath, wanting to admire his work from afar. Grabbing the towel draped over his shoulder, he begins to wipe at the dirty, clay-ridden hands. Realizing that it's not coming off, he begins to scrub at it even harder, forcing some of the skin underneath to pull apart and bleed. Panic runs through the man's veins, realizing that something is not right. His hands start to fumble within themselves and grasp at his hair, leaving traces of the substance to clump and dry within the root. His breath becomes shaky, feeling as if he's being suffocated by the encompassing walls, only able to form sharp wheezes that resonate within his lungs. A sharp pain shoots up from his wrist, resulting in his eyes to form tears that continue to pour down his sweat-ridden face. His fumbling hands move up to his face in an attempt to wipe away the tears, only causing the clay to get in his eyes, only causing more pain and clouds forming within his sight. He stumbles up from his stool and over to the door, managing to open with his slippery and shaky hands. His feet get caught up with themselves, causing him to fall onto the floor, busting open his lip and breaking his nose. Help, anyone please, he manages to squeak out, while his lungs constrict with the lack of air he is taking in. Making his way down the long corridor, moving deeper into the fancy museum and his exhibits, hoping to come across someone, realizing just how elegant it is, and being momentarily stalled while taking in its scenery. The rooms are all marble from floor to ceiling. The long hallway is laid out with the antique red carpet rolled down throughout the middle, surrounded by a variety of realistic sculptures. Between intervals of 10 to 15 feet sit the realistic depictions of men and women of all ages, walking up to one in particular. He's in awe at the detail. The eyes are open wide, along with the mouth. The eyebrows are raised as high as humanly possible. Even the minuscule veins within the neck and face are flexed and prominent, adding to the whole theme of stress and fear within the artwork. It's quite astonishing, really. In the midst of his despair and hysteria, the sound of heavy footsteps are heard down the long corridor, slightly saving him from his fit. Please help, I don't know what's happening to me, the man pleads to the dark shadow that is now his only savior. Calm down, you'll be fine, the voice speaks from the shadows, sounding unamused, somehow making him feel even more horrified. The shadow makes its way out of the dark and comes up to the younger man, realizing it's his boss, the guy who recruited him to this museum as a featured artist. A wave of calm washes over him. Alan, oh, thank God it's you. Listen, this clay, something's wrong. Shh, let it happen. Calm down, listen to me. Alan, his boss, cuts off. In an instant, an even more intense pain shoots up from his elbow down to his wrist, causing him to turn his head in an attempt to find the cause. Seeing that the clay has managed to creep its way up the whole arm, drying and ceasing all of its sensation and mobility, he panics even more. Listen to me, in about 10 minutes, the clay is going to make its way through your entire body. I told you you'd be a featured artist, didn't I? Alan states with a sinister look on his face paired with a humorous tone. Time passes with unreasonable questions and even more unreasonable answers. After about 8 minutes pass, the clay has reached up to about the young man's neck, disabling him from making any movements whatsoever, completely succumbing to whatever supernatural material is in the clay. With a sharp pain, he can feel the dryness of the clay make its way not only through his skin, but through his organs, pausing everything from functioning. His breathing stops mid-scream, his hands freeze while held out reaching for help, his face the perfect depiction of terror, fitting right in with the other statues within the museum. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't read that one in not too long, and I'm actually really happy with that. I'm really bad at revisions, so I think that's a really good success story. As I said before, I find comfort in kind of the more morbid topics. I kind of go on with a kind of wave of consciousness and just kind of let it happen. I wrote this one piece my very first semester, kind of first dealing with the college stress levels, comparing it to high school. So I decided to just go on a tangent about that and kind of make that disgusting reality more something beautiful. I wrote this the very first assignment we had in this class, and then as assignments went on, we had to choose one to progress and deal with like revisions and everything. So I felt really connected with it. This is succumbing to the stress. A wave of hysteria. 10 pounds of weight inhabit the bottom of her gut, a bubble rising to the top of her throat. Shaky hands thread themselves into the strands of her jet black hair, pulling at the root until a piercing pain shoots from her scalp, down her sweat-ridden neck. Forcing those same fumbling hands to drop back to her sides. I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine, she repeats, while internally she is anticipating the icy hands of death to whisk her away at any second. Her hands occupy themselves by scratching at the dead skin behind her long fingernails, drawing the blood to the surface, all while her teeth squeeze at her tongue. Tears build at the dam behind her eyes with the stinging sensations, yet the pain keeps her wandering mind away from reality. She feels disgusted by the vibrant yellows of the encompassing walls. She becomes aware. The relentless ticks of the clock above her head, signaling every third heartbeat. The feeling of her clothes itching and scratching as if thousands of ants lay beneath her skin. The taste of blood and cotton drying out her throat and tongue, making each and every breath hard to achieve. Her despairing wheezes break the buzzing silence of the room. Her lungs constrict as if she's being smothered by the surrounding air. The feet beneath her seem glued to the floor, but yet her head feels miles up in the air, floating up and up until she reaches the ceiling. As this goes on, her hands move themselves back up to her sore scalp, only to pull at the roots again, but now with an extreme force. She continues to pull and pull until the fistfuls of hair finally give. With wide eyes, she looks into her sweaty palms to see the wads of black hair and pieces of dry skin towards the tops. She drops the hair, puts her hands to the empty spot on her head, and in an attempt to stop the stinging pain. That bubble pops, the heavy weight subsides, and the sweat dries. Only left with blood-stained fingertips and unrelenting throb in the head, Her eyes continue to glance down at the floor beneath her, while her mouth draws flat. Her heart, which once beat like a drum, now remains hollow, weightless, and non-existent. So this one final piece, I kind of dabbled with poetry a little bit. I tend to ramble on if y'all haven't found out yet. So I was like, let's try something that I have to focus on what I'm really saying. Again, I kind of like descriptions of kind of loss of hope and something more morbid like that. So this one is a little bit more outright stated. It's titled Hope. You sit along a cold stump made from ice and snow. Hands shake while rubbing together, urging for warmth. You reach your hands in the pocket of the tattered flannel upon your back. Finding a box of matches. You pull them out, take one match in one hand, strike it against the stone in front, spark erupts. Next, a fire. Lowering the lit flame to the pile of dead twigs and decayed leaves, warmth has been created. Eyes closed, enjoying this feeling, the feeling of hope. A rumble is heard over your blissful head. Rain pours down, destroying your fire. You continue to reach back to your pocket, only to see you're out of matches. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, but most people on campus know me as Elle. I also had a really rocky start to college. Originally, I went to a four-year school for a year, didn't pan out, wasn't a big fan of it. I was like, what do I do now? And I live an hour from here, so I was like, let me try ACC. And I really didn't have a lot of expectations for a community college. I was like, I just want to finish out my second year, call it good. And honestly, I feel really honored to have attended here. The departments here are really amazing, and I've grown so much as not only a writer, but as a person as well. And it's amazing here, and I've met some really great people. So I'm going to start this off with a piece that is from a bigger collection. It was one of the first pieces I ever wrote here that I've revised a handful of times, and I really struggle with this idea of academic validation. I have to be the best at everything. I can't help it. And so I present to you Environmental Science Adirondack Hall 104. The growing light in the sky will not be abandoned. With its lingering thoughts of excellency, I am a meteor hurtling into the atmosphere of my peers. We're all on fire here until we crash. That's that one. It's really short. Piece I have. It was late at night one night, and I was trying to write something for Nancy White's class. I was like, And then I had this sudden wave of nostalgia come over me. I was like, oh my gosh, will I ever feel like a kid again? And I created this. I'd like to set my lungs free, but only during spring, like a vacation away from the allergens in the air. Oh, to forget the lack of ability to feel the smell of the first long cut of the season, or maybe the constant lack of oxygen from a nose so stuffed it could be mistaken for a Thanksgiving turkey. But I want my lungs back. Vacations can't last forever. I never want to forget the childlike innocence of the cold, crisp mountain air, filling my lungs each morning as I wait for the bus. Nor the strained feeling after spending the entire day outside, sledding down the local defunct ski hill with all my childhood friends before we had real problems to deal with. I refuse to abandon my irrational dream of a sweet and silly ice skating date where I can share a breathtaking kiss under a soft snowfall. So for now, my lungs shall remain trapped within their protective cage. I have another poem, and then I have a short story, but short. And this one is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this idea of like Victorian ballrooms where people just kind of like pretend that everything's okay and the world is like, the world's not real. So I created that, but based on how academia functions. The dance of academia. I'm reminded of an old ballroom with lively patrons dancing in tight circles, twirling around and around and around. Women doing the littlest things to attract the man across the room. Women feigning innocence, loud music ringing through everyone's ears, laughter sometimes louder than whatever classical ballad is playing. The hollow intercourse flying through the room is only subject to revolution when the music ceases to exist. And this short story I have, I'm kind of going through these fast, I'm sorry. This one originally started as a poem, and I was like, it's not working. So I revised it into a short story that I'm considering turning into a larger work, but for now, this is what I have, and it was also published in Expressions for this semester. So, what doesn't sit right? I will never forget my mother's screams when my little brother went missing. I was at the top of the stairs on my way to bed when a knock sounded on the door. Despite my better judgment, I stuck around, hoping to hear the town's latest gossip, thinking maybe it would be one of my moms from her weekly book club. But upon hearing a man's voice, my curiosity piqued. My mother never had a man's company later than 7 on a Tuesday, especially if my father wasn't home, an issue no one outside my house bothered to notice until everyone in town looked at us like birdseed and picked apart every single aspect of our lives. I quietly made my way back down the stairs now, wondering how my mother could be so brave, knowing what my father would do when he found out. He always found out. I barely made it 4 steps when my mother let out a screech that rivaled the cries of a dying animal. I rushed down the remaining steps, expecting her to be surrounded by dark pools of blood. What I was not prepared for was Officer Colic, dolefully looking down at my mother as she screamed on the floor. He held his cap in his hands. The night is full of blurred images of officers rushing in and out of my house, examining every inch. My mother and I were forced to sit outside on the curb. It was cold outside. Mother told me my brother Eli went missing. Terrible. I hope he's okay. She sobbed next to me. Neighbors began to crowd around the barrier, hoping to get a glimpse at discovering the unknown. Nothing like this ever happens in suburbia. I could hear distinct conversations of those who cared the most saying there was evidence of my mother's guilt. How had they known all along she was strange? They pitied me for having her as my mother. One of the town sheriffs brought my father to the scene just as a state trooper took away my mother. She was dragged away screaming, "I'm innocent," while in handcuffs tight enough to leave bruises. They had come to the conclusion in mere hours that my mother killed my brother. She used my EpiPen on him, thinking no one would suspect it. I was allergic to bees after all. But Officer Colic had found the evidence before the state took it. Colic came up to me after all was said and done and asked me one last question. Why would your mom use your EpiPen if Eli didn't need one? I remained quiet, thinking I had been caught. But father butted in before a follow-up question could be made. Cole, is there really a need for more questions? We've all been through a lot tonight, and I really would just like to enjoy time with my son alone. An unsatisfied Colic nodded, offering his apologies, and walked back to his cruiser. As my father and I headed back into the house, he held me tightly and whispered sternly to me, "You did a good job, son, but you better hope your mistake doesn't cost you."
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm also graduating. I came into SUNY thinking I was going to be writing so much work and I was going to have like hundreds of pieces that I've written, but honestly, I don't. I haven't really wrote that many because I've had more of like a writer's block recently, and I've been trying to figure out what really suits me. And I've come to the conclusion that writing romantic stories has really been my go-to. The first piece that I'm going to read is called Fairy Tale in Fur. I wrote this my first semester that was actually in person because my first year was all on Zoom. But this is actually one of my favorite pieces I've ever written. So it's a tiny little poem called Fairy Tale in Fur. You are a fairy tale in fur, former fierce worker of ladies in red, romping down the halls like highlights of auburn. You catch my eye, not like the average guy. I would I would spend countless fibbers with you at 4 a.m. Oh, how I wish for romantic rendezvous. I will settle to be at least one of your ladies in red for a season, a second, a sip of herbal tea later. You're still that fairy tale in fur for my wandering mind. Then you're gone, like a vapor in the wind. Will my highlights of auburn wear out or stay to haunt me? I'm horrified. And my second piece is actually in a collection I've been writing. I decided that I wanted to, after I graduate, write a poem book and have all my poems in it. It's called Words I'll Never Say. And it's just things I've never said out loud, but I have in my mind. So this one was actually submitted into the literary magazine. It's called Solitude. Your wrath protected me, solid foundations of endless romance, endless satisfactions, sensations hard to handle, cold February, warm April, sentimental moments of afterglows so small. I know the merriment will end in a minute time, seconds flat. I'm rushed with emotions unlike a human can handle. Solitude confines me in its cold taste. Lonely March, jealousy June, solitude loves my wrath. This next piece is another one that was selected into the literary magazine. They all are relatively the same genre. It's about romance. That's again what I gravitate towards, but this is called Hideaway. What if we hid, vanished from society like vanquished servants of the Almighty? We scoured the earth for its precious metals, seeked revenge on the hatred and the other fools who held to us. Dissipate to see how long it takes for others to find our trails of never-ending regrets. What if we hid in a hideaway where all our neighbors were hiding too, finding the love that they never felt before, the escape? We are surrounded by northern lights, bright and luxurious, baffling in betrayal. You were my hideaway for a second. Now I sit in a throne of lies and despair. This last piece I'm going to be reading is a short story. It's nowhere close to being finished, but it's just a tiny little section of it. It's about an older man telling his son a story about his first love back in the Great Depression era. It was raining. It wasn't too bad. It was actually sort of nice. There was a park the way I walked that looked stunning when the sun shone on it on nicer days. I walked past it as I saw the gloominess of it all, and I felt someone bump into my hip. I look up to find the silky remnants of the most beautiful ruby red dress, not like any ordinary ruby red dress, but the most stunning thing that I have ever laid on my eyes. Excuse me, ma'am, I'm sorry, I'm not paying much attention today. As I looked at her, her eyes made the rain suddenly fade into my peripheral vision. Her beautiful brunette hair, the color of a fine chocolate that the taste reminisces for hours. She couldn't possibly have a beautiful voice, too. That'd be nearly a miracle. She speaks up. No worries, sir. The rain is sort of somber today. She was a miracle. That was the most stunning voice that it had ever laid on my ears. She was the light in the center of the storm. She began to walk away as the texture of her silk dress touched me. It soothed my soul. She was the medicine to cure any disease. She was light. Excuse me, ma'am. She turns around and faces me. Her red lipstick was fading from the rain, even though she had an umbrella. She looked at me puzzled. You never told me your name. She moves her mouth to the side in confusion. Now, why would I tell you such a thing? We have said one sentence to each other. You could be a murderer. I chuckle. Yes, there is always that possibility that I could chop you to bits. But sadly, my only fascination is because of how stunning you are. Is it wrong for me to ask? Her smile appears a little, but not too visible. Adelia Foxwood. And you are? My eyes light up. Alistair Michael, ma'am. She was silent. Only the sound of the rain patting on the tile made a presence. She nods as she starts to walk away out of my vision. Her perfume lingered in my nose like a flame. It smelled of rose and sapphire. I watched her as she disappeared into the fog, and the complexion of her silk stayed on my hand like a rash, but I didn't want to get rid of it. I was starstruck.
Everybody, my name is Kayla Madison and I am also graduating this semester. So I'm not gonna lie, creative writing was not my first choice. I was originally going for childhood education, which I was pretty stoked for because I still work with children, elementary school children. But the math it requires to work with just preschoolers and kindergartners is outrageous, and I'm not going to learn calculus and geometry and waste my money because I am terrible at math. So, my second choice was creative writing because literally ever since I was in middle school, I have loved it. English has been, it's just my thing. You know, I originally started with short stories, which didn't even make sense, but as I got into high school and really started, grooving with English classes, just I found my safe space, which is poetry, because in my junior year, I started on a decline with my mental health. And I just needed to find a place to go that would help me feel better. And that is kind of like my thematics, I think, for my poetry. It's just a lot of mental health themes and just a deep feeling in my gut of, what I really need to strive for. And with my English professors, one being like Kathy and Nancy and Professor Rivera, they really just strive for me to get there where I need to be. So for the first two pieces I'm going to read today, they were accepted actually into the magazine. The first one being Planet Politics. My head, like the earth, polluted with the toxins of brain fog, causes mental strain, catastrophically suffocating. Is it amnesia, nitrogen dioxide, coal-infused clouds, ashy skies, chemically produced tears? Am I in a double life? Derealization, transformation, no amount of disassociation will erase contaminated destruction. Rise higher, add fuel to this fire, stripping away bark and limber roots, forest lives and rights, just like they are an average woman. I guess that is proof Earth really is a mother, a protector. Treat her better, treat us better. One for all for one. Thank you. And this next piece is called I Pray for Cosmos. What has been lost, seek hope in grave believing. You deserve to know your worth. An estrial stork brought forth down unique astronomical, stars shine free. My child, I believe we all have our own flames, and don't let yours fizzle out. So this next piece was back in February of 2022. It was also accepted into the magazine at that time. This one is more of a deeper poem. So yeah, it's called Memoir. There was a time in my life that I felt used. My heart and body was destroyed, tethered, weathered. Used as if it was a napkin at a restaurant to clean a messy baby's face. Used as if it was an old pencil to write a lengthy essay for an English class. Used as if it was a rickety playground my younger self was looking at and said, why did I let this happen to me? There was a time in my life when I grew up and still felt used. My heart and soul was being destroyed, tethered, weathered. Used as if it was a condom at a frat party to practically get the job done. Used as if it was another glass of liquor to throw back and numb the pain. Used as if it was a beating bag for the average person to get their anger out. There's a time in my life where I'm still growing up and I'm over feeling used, but somehow still let myself fall short. I just want my childhood back and to be young forever, but let's be realistic with each other. That's not the truth. It's never the truth, nor is what I supposedly went through. Let's see. Bear with me. I have too many papers. I came over prepared. Too many of you. So this next piece is called The Wanderer's Midday Display. So we had to make a final portfolio for Nancy's class, of just various poems. So, yeah. Hushed autumn eve, mysterious gent in a feathery top hat. Monocle swirls with a paralyzing dimension. Puff puff smoke surrounds haze, hypnotic hurricane. Hue transform into an extreme illusion unleashed. The wanderer lets out a chuckle and says, having a nice trip, as the roll cursed scroll decays in the midday ashtray. This last poem I have is one that I actually wrote the other day, kind of in like a 5-minute spur. I have not really revised it, but I just wanted to throw it in here because it wasn't really a class thing, but I don't know. So it's called Processing Remedies. My heart is a loading circle, unlike squares that just keeps buffering with unfair butterflies. Endless amounts of loops and hopes I would one day come back to you. Too many tabs in the back of my mind. They are slowing down the motherboard. Wiki, how do I stop looking at their Instagram? Hey Siri, where do I go from here? Perhaps WebMD is right. This isn't no ordinary heartbreak. Maybe, just maybe it's a heart attack too. So instead of coming back in the end, one day, I can figure out how to get over you. And this last piece is a short story that I made in Kathy's class. It is called Pig Potatoes.
Tell them the inspiration.
So the inspiration was for one of Lolly Davidson's pieces from Strange Appetites. It is an imitation of it. So the soil and mulch spray through the air, masking any other scent to be found. At this rate, my grandmother and I have developed a face cleanser that has covered our faces from the brown specks. Our fingers become roots within as we plant the flowers, tomatoes, and potatoes. We must wait, she breathes to me. The amount of love we share and cherish under the sun and moonlight will dictate how well they grow. I nodded as we sauntered inside the rickety house. My grandmother and I are very close, so this should not be a problem for the growing children, I hope. Every morning, every night, I watch as the seeds become sproutlings. So one night was odd. In the corner of my eye, when I glared out the window, it was almost as if a tiny paw was peeking out of the dirt. How strange, I said to myself. Brushing it off, I moved on with my life. This little paw stuck with me, on and on. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. Anytime I turned or looked too closely at something, it was there. It was almost as if it was ingrained or branded inside my head. Sighing, I lay down on my bed, looking through my old photos on my cellular phone. I smile at the pictures of my guinea pigs back at home. Oh, piggies, I miss you. I shall be home soon. Finally, the day arrived when a full sun and a full moon would appear, which would result in the harvesting of the grown children. Walking towards our garden, I noticed dirt sprawled around crazily. This cannot be. Maybe I am going crazy. Looking towards the potatoes, their eyes started turning into actual eyes. I ran back inside and hid. I'm sure grandmother will fix this, right? The full moon shone brightly in the wretched black night sky. Grandmother and I arrived in the garden to see what had grown. I'm sweating from being so nervous and anxious while we sat down to pick the potatoes. Oh, those gosh darn potatoes. Not again, I exclaimed. They all started to grow little pink noses, 4 paws with adorable toes and big old eyes, and a round body with colors of all sorts of patterns. Guinea pigs, my grandmother shrieked out of despair, unlike I who yelled out of adoration and curiosity. She turned to me and stuck her pointer finger out at me, just as long as her nose. You ruined the garden ritual. You didn't think about just the plants and us. selfish child. I was in absolute awe. I didn't mean to. Looking around me, the baked potatoes surrounded me with braveness in their eyes. In a matter of a few seconds, they all climbed up on top of each other and magically formed one big baked potato. It made a very loud, weak type of howl to the moonlight. To be fair, I said, I think this is the best garden ritual I have ever done, even if it was my first, and I ruined it. Thank you.
Got it?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, done. Thank you to Kayla, Elle, Lacey, Michael, and Melissa, and thanks to all of you. I'd also, thank you, Dr. Duffy, for coming. Our president is here. We have some professors here and family, I think. Wonderful, great crowd. I wanted to thank the Faculty Student Association for sponsoring Expressions, which is out today. If you missed it, we've surreptitiously disseminated them about campus. So by all means, grab a free copy. I'd like to thank the administration for supporting the Writers Project, and thanks to our students and our faculty for supporting our wonderful creative minds. Thank you so much. Get some snacks on the way out. Thank you.
Let me get one for your dad.
Yeah, okay.
That was fantastic.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, that was great. You did a great job.
No. Yes, this is for Dad. Oh, thank you. Yes. One for Dad. Thank you.
Got all red by your.
Thank you. Congratulations. I did, yes, I did.
I could tell you were getting. Oh.
Congratulations.
I never baked potato before, so it was there.
I don't think I've ever read the whole thing. I remember hearing about it, but I didn't see. Heard the whole thing.
So I'm getting a cupcake. Yeah, sure.